Welcome to the With Winning in Mind podcast. I'm Heather Sumlin with Troy Bassham. And if you are not one of our Patreon members, can I just invite you to join us because we have put so much new content out there. Today, I woke up this morning, Troy, and I started thinking about frustration. I think people get frustrated.
Well, that's
often.
because you still have a teenager at home.
You think my teenagers cause me my frustration?
I think they do a wonderful job of causing frustration.
It is actually not my teenager that has caused my recent frustration. But that's not what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the fact that frustration can either lead to motivation or demotivation. You get to choose.
Or destruction.
Oh, I like that. It leads to motivation or destruction.
Frustration leads to destruction if you're not careful.
I like that. Well, I don't like that happens, but it's true. So frustration can lead to motivation
or
destruction, specifically of your self-image. I like this. I found a couple of other quotes that I thought were interesting, so I thought I'd pull them up and see what you think about these.
Okay.
So this is Dale Carnegie quote. He says, "Our fatigue is often caused not by work, but by worry, frustration, and resentment."
Yeah, Dale Carnegie is one of the best. That's really good.
Yes, I like that. Do you agree with this statement? Obviously, because you said it was good.
Oh, yeah.
Has this ever happened to you where you were fatigued by frustration, worry, or resentment?
Oh, yeah. Especially in competition when things aren't going well. So frustration affects you mentally, and when your mental energy goes down, it drains your physical energy. So you get physically drained because you're mentally fatigued. And I think a lot of that comes from frustration. I'm not doing well. I'm not doing as well as I want. This is going to happen. You start thinking all the bad things. The next thing you know, it just spirals down. And you just want out. You're tired. You're like, I'm done. And you're only halfway through.
Okay, so what does someone do in these scenarios? Is there something, just a simple solution to this problem?
Well, in this particular example, when a person has frustration, 9 times out of 10, it's because they're focusing on the result, which is not what we want. We want to focus on the process, not the result. So they go in there expecting to perform a certain way. It's not happening that way. Maybe it's the start of the competition. You know, we see this a lot in individual sports. It's not going quite the way I want. And I get frustrated and I'm like getting upset. Next thing you know, I'm starting to lose it. And the best thing to do when that happens is to regroup. You need to recover. So if you don't know how to do a recovery strategy, or you don't have a recovery strategy, you need one. You know, recovery strategy is nothing more than a way to kind of just start on a clean slate. It's a way for you to just kind of take a step back, calm down, regroup, and say, okay, I'm ready. I'm going to start over. Even though you can't go back and start from the beginning, it feels like you're starting from the beginning. If you can do that, then you're good to go. Now you're using frustration as a way to guide you in the right direction, but it's very difficult to do. That takes mental discipline.
So it's funny because you said expectation, and then that's what kind of leads to frustration. And it says, there's another quote I found.
Oh, which one's this one?
Expectation is the mother of all frustration.
Who said that? Do you know?
Antonio Banderas. Kind of cool. Yeah. Or at least that's who's given credit for it.
Isn't he the one that played Zorro?
Yeah. Oh, I think so. I'm really not good at knowing who celebrities are. My husband gets frustrated probably with me every now and again because we'll be watching a movie or a TV show and he's like, you know who that is? Not a clue. And he's like, well, so-and-so is in this movie. I'm like, and who is that? I'm always asking, well, who is that? Who is that? Because I don't remember names. I know faces, but I don't remember names of celebrities. And I don't follow famous people like on social media and things like that. So
yeah, I'm with you. I'm not the best at that. But there are a few that I just follow, like their movies, and I kind of follow them. And then you'll pick another one you kind of follow. So
I mean, I
remember those, but that's it.
I know some of the big names. Obviously, I know who Tom Cruise is. Ashley's car's named after him because she drives a Chevy Cruze. So she named it Tom. Isn't that funny?
Named it Tom.
I said, what's the name of your car? She goes, I named him. I said, what's his name? She goes, Tom. And I'm like, why? And she goes, Because he's a cruise.
Well, so Sydney, my youngest daughter, used to have a black Chevy Cruze hatchback, and she named him Alfred
Why?
from Batman.
Oh, okay, cute.
Named him Alfred.
Okay, cute. So there's other times when we can get frustrated and we can channel that into something that's more motivation than frustration. I think one of the things that I was thinking about this morning when I woke up was that whenever we stay frustrated, it is draining energy, and it's almost always shrinking self-image, isn't it? Because when we're frustrated, are we thinking positive or negative thoughts? I mean,
Yeah, mostly negative.
Mostly negative. And so a lot of times those negative thoughts are about ourselves or about our situation, or then we're upset and we're angry, and then we tend to call people and get upset and angry and talk to them about it, and our self-image just shrink. And that's the destruction you were talking about.
Yeah, I also think it depends on when you're frustrated. Like if you're, let's say, a month out before a big competition or an event that's happening in your life, maybe I got to give this big presentation and things aren't just going well. Like I usually have a plan for this big event. I set up my week to week leading up to the, the big event, and things usually go a certain way. And then I go into that big event, whatever it is, and I knock it out of the park. I'm good to go. But what happens when it's not going the way that it normally goes? 3 weeks out, you're like, okay, this is not working. I do not feel like I'm prepared for this thing that's coming up in a week, 2 or 3 weeks from now. What do you do? And if you're frustrated, I think that's an indicator that, wait a minute, we need to reevaluate our plan.
Oh, I like that. So frustration is also an indication.
Indication. Yeah, it's an indicator of hang on, things are going well. I need to go back and reevaluate. Maybe there's something I missed. Maybe I need to tweak something, make some slight adjustments. And when you make those adjustments, boom, you can now move forward. Much easier than if you just try to grind it and push through it. Now there are some instances where grinding it out is probably the right approach, but in a lot of cases, grinding it out is, man, you got to be really tough to do that. I mean, you talk about discipline. You want to grind out something. It's like you're just pushing through something because okay, this is just a normal pattern of life. You just got to get through it and you just grind it out. I think a lot of people can't do that. They get frustrated and they go off the rails, and next thing you know, they don't perform well.
So yesterday, the reason I even thought of this whole concept for our session today was Ashley was frustrated after school.
It was a teenager.
Yeah, I wasn't frustrated with her, though. I wasn't frustrated with her. She had a little bit of frustration from something, and it happens. We all have that tendency to be frustrated by something, whether it's a coach, a teacher, a parent, a peer, something that you see on TV. Yesterday, I got moldy food in a drive-thru, so could have been super frustrated. Luckily, I didn't get all the way home with it, so I was able to return it, get my money back, and go somewhere else.
Were you frustrated that you had your moldy sandwich?
Well, actually, yes. And I was frustrated because this was the third time that I was giving them that one more chance. So I basically but I was very kind. I didn't let it ruin my day. I just said, give me my money back. I will not be back.
Okay, that's because I was on the phone with you when you were going through this process. So you were kind to them, but when you made the trip around to the drive-thru, that was not the same kind person. That was like, I can't believe it. And then
I just won't be coming back.
I have a mold on my sandwich here, and that's, I don't want to eat it. Okay. Drive up there. Oh, yeah, it is mold. And they gave you a refund, I think, and then you went somewhere else.
They did. They did give me a refund. I told them I would not be coming back. And they said, wait a month and come back because we're changing everything and whatever. And I said, I'm only come back if you give me some free food. I need an incentive to come back. I just had free food. And so they told me they would give me free food if I came back. It was a whole sidetrack.
Well, you were very frustrated at that particular place.
But I got over it real quick because then I went to another place and I had a really great service. I went to Taco Bell. I don't usually eat at Taco Bell, but they had really great service that day.
Yeah.
So that was good.
See, now
they all know I eat horrible food.
They all know you go through the drive-thru.
I go through the drive-thru. I mean, sometimes you're just in a hurry and on a budget. Anyway.
So
totally
Ashley was frustrated.
My whole entire thing.
Ashley was frustrated yesterday, and she was, I guess, expressing that to you.
Yes, but she was about to go into a tumble class. And I said, okay, I want you to use your frustration as motivation. Go throw your frustration on the mat. Just use it as fuel because you have all this energy. So you have all of this energy and you're using it on this frustration that you're feeling when you could be using it on power to execute the skills. And so we did a little bit of a reminder, make sure that she's rehearsing, before and after, that she's really running her mental program appropriately as she's working on her skills. She had an amazing tumble day. And then she didn't mention the thing that was frustrating her ever again. And so I think she was able to let it go, push through in her class, and have a really great class. So you have a choice to make. You either let whatever's frustrating you to overpower you and lead to that destruction, or you use it as motivation.
Yeah, you're going to control your conscious thoughts, or you can let the environment that's frustrating you control your conscious thought. Mm-hmm. And in this direction, you told her, look, you control how you want to think about it. I prefer to use it as motivation. She took that and ran with it and had a great rest of the day.
She's also pretty good at limiting who she talks to when she's frustrated about something. Like we talked about before, find that one person who's going to help you come up with a solution, and that's the person that you talk to, so that you're not just spreading, your drama, your issues all over the place and causing your self-image to shrink. So she's typically pretty good at that too, which is good for a 17-year-old.
So she was very happy afterwards.
Absolutely. Great day, ultimately. So you choose. Do you want to be frustrated and then turn it to motivation or destruction?
So did you have any other quotes?
Oh, let me look. I think I do.
There was one other one. I think you had one from Robbins.
Well, I don't think I screenshot Robin's quote, but I do have... I really liked this one, and I have no idea who actually said it. It says, all frustrations are self-induced. The outside world can invite us to become upset, but we ultimately accept the invitation.
Yeah, somebody made a comment. I was listening to a podcast, and it was Dr. Anderson was his name, and he was talking about, you're a witness, you're not a participant. So he's talking about the environment. You see something happening, you witness it, but that doesn't mean you have to participate in that. And how many of us fall into the participation part of it? They see something they don't like, next thing they start talking about it to somebody else, and it spirals out of control, and the next thing you know, it's not helping them, it's hurting them. I think that's where frustration makes it easy for that invitation.
I like that. You are a witness, not a participant.
Yeah, you're talking about your consciousness. You consciously witness things. You have to choose to participate into it.
I really like that. And I like when it talks about frustrations are self-induced, almost like that's a decision that you're making. It's kind of like when we talk about the importance of responding versus reacting. And so I think frustration really is a form of reaction to something, because if you're responding, you're going to choose something other than frustration in the way in which you actually respond. So yes, initial frustration is going to exist, but you decide whether or not you participate in that and give it power.
Yeah, this is why I think a lot of champions who dominate their sport are so good, because they don't fall into these traps. They use frustration as a motivation, like you mentioned earlier. They use it to regroup. They use it as a way to look at things from a solution direction and not a problem direction. And you see this a lot with elite level athletes. Okay, this didn't go well. Okay, I need to go back, find out what do I need to correct. And then the next day they go out and they compete, they're a totally different performer. And it's like, wow, how did they do that? Because they didn't allow themselves to get frustrated. Right when they started to, they go, wait a minute, this is telling me something. Let me go back, find out what I need to do, make that change, and then change it. And if you can do that on a consistent basis, you're controlling it, not the environment.
I also think a lot of times frustration leads to grudges, potentially, or holding on to anger and holding that anger hostage. So I found a Buddha quote that was interesting.
Okay.
It says, holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
That's interesting.
I found that to be interesting because I think when we do hold on to anger, we're basically poisoning ourselves. We're poisoning our minds. We're affecting our happiness and our ability to progress forward towards whatever it is that we need to do for ourselves. And it doesn't affect the other person at all.
Yeah.
So it's not actually valuable, but it can lead to tremendous frustration. So that's why I screenshot that.
Which would lead to destruction in that example.
I found the other one. It says holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else, but you're the one who's getting burned. Same concept.
Same concept.
Same concept. Interesting.
So what are some of the things that you recommend to your clients who get frustrated? Because you deal a lot with, well, you deal with two sports I think are unique, independent of each other. One, you deal with dog agility where you're dealing with an animal. I'm sure a lot of them get frustrated when, their dog is not doing what they're supposed to be doing, right? And then you deal with another group of individuals that are competing multiple events within the pageant world. They're doing an interview and then they're going to go out there and perform another event in front of an audience. Quite different. I've got a handful of people that ask me a bunch of questions over a period of time. And then next thing you know, now I got to go out there and perform something like an evening gown thing in front of a whole audience, which is totally opposite of before. I'm not talking. There's a handful of people, Now, no, I'm not talking, and there's a large group of people versus I am talking, present myself into a small group of people. And that's got to be frustrating going from one event to the next event if things don't work out the way I want going forward. But I guess the commonality is it didn't work the way I want, but I got to go back out there and do it again or do another event in the competition. So what are some of the techniques you advise them?
Well, first thing that came to mind when you started talking about the industries that I'm in is both of those sports or outlets, competitive outlets, actually attract perfectionist mentalities. So people who are perfectionists. And I've always thought that demanding perfection in a world that's incapable of allowing you to achieve it is frustration at its finest. Like there is no way to be perfect or to perform perfectly. And so you have to change your expectations for yourself. And we talk about demand progress, not perfection. And that's one of the first things that we'll talk about whenever I'm working with someone because they tend to be demanding more from themselves than they're capable of giving. And that leaves them disappointed on the daily. So that's one thing is let's adjust what your expectations are of yourself, what your expectations are of your partner if you're in canine sports, or maybe even of your coaches, your friends, your peers, your family, and all of that. So that's the first thing. And then
So demand progress, not perfection, is the first thing you look at.
Because if you demand perfection in a world where it's just incapable of reaching that, you will be frustrated and typically with yourself.
There you go. Demand progress.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And then that's kind of where your measuring stick is, right? Am I getting better every day leading up to competition? And then when you get there, then it's all about trusting that training that you've done, trusting that you've put in the work and you've done enough to be able to perform up to your potential when it matters. And so there's this element, we've talked about this before, it's trust, not try when you're in a competitive environment. If you're trusting your ability and you're trusting that this is the right time for you, and if you're going to win, it's going to happen, and you're not trying to make it happen, you're less likely to be frustrated or to fall into that trap that you were talking about. So those things, plus you need to have a solid mental program. You need to have an idea of how you want to handle your mental game and be committed to following through.
Yeah, I like that. The frustration part is just a reminder to evaluate, am I making progress? If I'm not, let me reevaluate what I'm doing, make the appropriate changes, and move forward. Okay, excellent. Do you have another one?
Well, the other thing that I was kind of thinking about as well is that if you can start your day with goals, like have an idea of goals that you want to accomplish. And pageantry is a big example of this, I think, because you're not in control of the schedule and you don't always really know what the schedule is. You know that on this day you're going to compete in this event and this day you're going to compete in this event, but you don't have control over your day because you're with an organization who is setting the schedule and you may not get that schedule in advance. So unlike most sports where you determine when you're going to wake up and what you're going to eat and where you're going to go and who you're going to talk to, you don't have that kind of luxury.
Yeah, but what sport is that?
What do you mean?
Well, what sport? I guess my sport would be that way because
Yeah.
most of our matches, if you're one of the top shooters, you're going to shoot at 8:00 in the morning. So I see what you're saying. I get to determine when I wake up, when to prepare. But in most sports, I think it's that way. Like in golf, you don't know when you tee off. Somebody else makes that determination. You don't get to determine who you get to play with. Someone else makes that determination. And then the courses change, where I go from tournament to tournament changes. So I see what you're saying. In sports that are more demanding outside of your control,
You need to have goals that you can accomplish. Plus, and I think my point is in pageantry, for a solid 5 or 6, 7 days, potentially, you don't have control over your schedule at all.
Yeah, because they have prelims, don't they, leading up to the big event?
Well, and you're sequestered, and they control when you go somewhere, what you eat, all of it is outside of your control. And so, whereas I feel like you have to be in control of something, so you feel like you're accomplishing something along the way. So some things that I'll recommend are things that just bring you a little bit of joy in the day, help you remember that you're valuable. So things like smiling at people, making sure that you're having valuable conversations with the people that you are eating lunch with or staying with or whatever,
Just mini goals for the day that you set in the morning.
Right. And do the job before you earn it. Like in pageantry, at the end, one person's life is going to change forever depending on which competition they're doing. If you become Miss America, that's a full-time position, paid position that you earn on that day. And your whole life is going to
And that's
change.
for what, a year? Mm-hmm. Well, imagine the networking they get to do in that year.
It's nice. And they get paid for it. It's a good gig. But if you're thinking about that while you're at competition, then you're not focusing on the small goals that you can control, and you're going to lead to what? Frustration.
Gotcha. So that's
set
good advice.
Small goals. Set small goals. Demand progress, not perfection. Trust, not try.
Yeah, basically it's just how do you utilize frustration? Are you utilizing it to your advantage, or are you getting caught up in participating in what the world wants you to do? Get upset, go the wrong way, and they don't have to worry about you.
It's okay to recognize you're frustrated. It's not okay to stay there.
Excellent.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Go ahead and like this episode if you do. Share it with a friend. Join our Patreon channel. We post more content. We're going to talk a little bit about that recovery strategy that Troy mentioned and break that down for you and give you some more tips on how you can keep from being frustrated when you need to be motivated.